All right, Marshall. Marshall, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
From Michigan,
What part?
Pontiac.
Hmm.
It's in Oakland County.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about your family growing up. You had mom and dad?
I had a mom, and my dad and my mother got a divorce when I was still young yet. And then my mother remarried a guy, and we got along pretty good, but he was an alcoholic, and he ended up dying. And my mother, more or less, I had three sisters and a brother, younger brother. I'm the oldest boy. My mother ended up working two jobs trying to raise us all. And we got along pretty good. But I ended up getting into juvenile because I got into trouble and stuff. And my mother went ahead and went to the court, and the court released me to go in the military. And they dropped all charges. And I went in the military. I did well on my job, but I just couldn't adjust to service, so I got out in 1958. So I had reserve, but I didn't have to go to reserve because it was other than honorable conditions. And basically I guess that's about all you would need there in my background
Yeah.
from home.
But what kind of work have you done in your life?
Oh, I did a lot of work. I worked in the factories up in Michigan, and until I moved down here in '69. And I worked at Channel 10 out here on Gandy. I run studio camera. And the station sold out, and they brought their own people in, the company that bought it. So I left Channel 10 then at that point. I went to work for Amaro Corporation, and they built solid waste sewer plants. And I worked there until '86, until I got sent to prison.
And you were married?
Yes, I got married. I married my wife. She started visiting me while I was in prison. When I got released, we got married. And I had two daughters.
So you did prison time before you got married.
Yes.
What was that for, the prison time?
I wrote bad checks.
Oh, I see. And then you got married,
I got married,
had two kids,
had two daughters.
hmm and then you got in trouble again.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I molested my daughter and a neighbor daughter. And the neighbor daughter was 9 years old. My daughter started when she was about 6, and it continued. A lot of it was fondling up until she got up around 14. It escalated to me having intercourse with her one time, and then it came to light to the police department of what was going on, and I was arrested. And then I was appointed a lawyer, and the lawyer tried to get me a plea negotiation. Well, the judge was going to give me a plea negotiation, and she told me it would just be a formality of going in front of him and take my plea from guilty to not guilty, and then that would make the plea negotiation. So when I got in front of the judge, he was under the understanding with my lawyer, I guess, that I would receive 15 years for attempted sexual battery. Well, when I got in front of him and he started reading off the time he was giving me, the prosecutor says, "Excuse me, Your Honor, Mr. White is pleading guilty to attempted capital sexual battery." And he says, "Well, I just give the man 15 years. She says, "It's capital, attempted capital sexual battery." So he rescinded that sentence he just gave me and gave me 50 years in prison and 30 years probation. Well, at that time, they took time off of that 50 years, plus good behavior in prison. And that brought the time down a little bit, a third off. the probation, I had 2 counts, in other words, one on the neighbor daughter and my daughter from a period of like 6 to 14. And my wife, we got a divorce. Well, I went to prison in 86. We got a divorce in 88 because she met somebody and she didn't want to be dating someone else, still being married to me. So she got a divorce in 88. She asked me if it was all right with me to file the paperwork for the divorce, and I says, yeah, okay. So I did, trying to save her some money there. And we got divorced in 88. The 30-year probation is still running right now. And I was going to ask for early term on my probation because of my age and my health is not getting any better. I've had a stent put in my heart. I've had other things done surgically. Correct.
How old are you now? How old are you now?
83.
83. And you've been out for how long?
Like I said, I got released from Arcadia Treatment Center in 2011. So I've been out. I lived here for a while. Then I moved to where I'm living now. So I've been out since 2011.
And looking back at your life, you seem to be, you're attracted to young girls, right?
Yes.
And that is something that just, how do you view it? Is it just something that you have in your DNA? It wasn't because of something that happened to you as a kid or anything like that?
I'm not sure when it started. I think something happened to me, and I just.
Oh, you think maybe you were touched when you were young?
I believe so. That's a little fuzzy with me. I'm not sure exactly when, but something got me curious and interested in that. And like I say, my mother seen that I was not doing good, so she had the judge. When I went in front of the judge in Michigan, she recommended I would go in the military if the judge would drop the charges there. And the judge agreed to it and let me go in the military. And so therefore, that settled that end in Michigan. When I got out of the military in '58, I went to work in the factory up there. And in '69, like I say, I moved to Florida, and I ended up working at a TV station, Marl Corporation, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Now you're in a sex offender mobile home park.
Excuse me?
You're in a mobile home park for sex offenders now.
I was living here, but I'm not now. I'm living over in a house right behind the Comfort Inn.
Oh, you're right next door.
On 54th.
Yeah.
I share the house with another gentleman, and of course the rent is getting so high. They built a bunch of new homes down from us, and that appraisal raised the rent of everybody else in that area.
Tell me about your relationship with your daughter after this happened.
Well, it was confusing for her, and it caused her a lot of grief, a lot of anxieties, not confusion on her love for me as her father, and both my daughters are married. My wife ended up making sure they graduated high school, and they married good men. And I don't hear from them now because it was part of my stipulation that I would not associate with minors and I would not contact my daughters. They could contact me if they wanted to, but I was not to contact them. So I haven't talked to them since I was released from prison, or from Arcadia.
And what are your feelings about what you did to the neighbor's girl and your daughter?
After going through treatment at Arcadia and 2 years of treatment here, I realized how terrible a person I was, and I feel really sorry about what I did. I can't change that, but I've tried to be a good person since I've been released. from prison. Like I say, when I lived here, we've got a lot of older people that lives here. I would come down and help them with their yard work and stuff, and painting trailers and stuff. And I tried to give back some of what I took, and I've tried to be a better person. I think I've done a pretty good job. I've not had any violations of my probation. I've not had any trouble with law enforcement. I watch a lot of TV, and I work on my yard where I live.
Did you continue to have the desire for young girls after this happened, when you were in prison, or for years later?
Well, after I got going to the treatment, like I said, the treatment at Arcadia was pretty extensive. I mean, you had to do writing reports. You had to play role models about you being the victim or the other person being the victim. And it was set up to where you would be aware of places you shouldn't go when you got released, people you shouldn't associate with because of the problems you had, the attraction. And it was very good, a good treatment program.
Yeah, I've heard about it. But even aside from the treatment that they provided, the desire for these kind of interactions still exists, no? Or existed before you became, you're 83 now, so your libido is probably not what it was when you were younger.
No, it isn't.
Yeah. But when you were younger, in your 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe you still had the desire?
I was in prison up till I was 40-something.
Oh, I see.
So I still thought about it while I was in prison. When I got released to go to Arcadia and started going through treatment, they had groups at Arcadia. You'd have like 13 or 14 guys, and you'd have a doctor. He would ask questions, and then the group would ask you questions. They would tell you about their offenses, how they felt about them, and you tell them about how you felt about your offenses. And it was very beneficial being able to have interaction.
Did it help you build compassion or empathy or understanding of what your victim went through?
And I realized that empathy was very important in your life. And it was a good program. And when I got released from prison and came home, I came here to live. And of course, they had treatment here at that time, right here in this office. And we'd have about 25, 30 people in the group. And Don Sweeney, the doctor, over the treatment, he would ask each one questions, and they'd have ask each other questions. And we'd challenge each other on the things we talked about. He would ask them about what they did, how their week went, and some of them would answer the questions where you could see that they hadn't changed much. So we would challenge them, and they would challenge you over your actions, how your thinking was going.
Tell me about your mindset when you were doing this with the young girls. Are you just kind of blind to the repercussions that might come afterwards, and you're just going after your desires?
I think I was, because I continued to do things at that point. I thought about my wants. I didn't think about how the victim would feel, how it would affect their life. I didn't think of those things. And
but that you could call it selfish or reckless behavior. Was that something that existed outside of your sexual?
No, I've always been a caring person for people. My mother always bragged with her friends, lady friends and stuff. She says, out of all my kids, this is my favorite, because he's a caring person, and I've always been that type of person, to care, to help other people, and I've seen they needed help, I would help them. So in those respects, I was always a caring person in that area.
How did you seduce the neighbor's girl?
She came down to see my youngest daughter, and I was home. My wife was working, and there was no one there but me. And I says, well, my youngest daughter will be home pretty soon. I said, you want to come in and wait for her? And she came in, and I got talking to her, and I told her, I says, you want to play a little game? And she says, what? And I told her, I says, I will take my penis out. I didn't tell her what penis, but, and I said, I want you to suck on it. So kids look up to grown-ups. They obey what grown-ups tell them. That was my mode of operation at that time, knowing that that's how they would react. Well, I put my penis in her mouth, and she didn't like it, so she pulled her head back and opened her eyes, and she seen my hand with something in it. And they asked her, the prosecuting attorney's office, their representative talked to her. They asked her, what did she see when she opened her eyes? And she says, I seen his privates. They said, well, how did you know that's what his privates? She said, I've seen my brother. And they weren't going to have her come to court because of the shock and the hurt and the shame.
It's got to be traumatic for a young girl.
Right. And so she didn't come to court when I got sentenced on the plea negotiation. My daughter chose not to come. She could have come if she wanted. She chose not to. So